Alex Carter had everything: power, wealth, and a life most could only dream of. But as he sat alone in his sleek black Mercedes, staring into the city's glow, he felt nothing. Then came the knock on his window. Two children stood outside, their wide blue eyes unsettlingly familiar. "Mister, can you give us a ride?" He had no idea that by saying yes, he was about to unravel a past he never knew existed. Alex Carter sat in his black Mercedes S-Class, parked in front of an upscale restaurant in the heart of New York City. The neon lights from the surrounding buildings reflected off the sleek surface of his car, but he wasn't paying attention to the city's vibrant nightlife. Inside the vehicle, the silence was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the engine. He had just finished another business meeting, another high-stakes negotiation that had gone exactly as he had planned. A few $1 billion richer, another deal secured, yet he felt nothing. At 34, Alex was one of the most successful tech CEOs in the country. His name was synonymous with innovation and power, his face gracing the covers of financial magazines. Investors admired him, competitors feared him, and employees respected him, but no one truly knew him. His life was a cycle of high-pressure meetings, private jet flights, and carefully curated social events. He had everything most people could only dream of: luxury penthouses, supercars, influence that stretched across industries, but there was a hollow space inside him that no amount of success could fill. He leaned back against the leather seat, loosening his tie slightly, exhaling deeply. There were moments like this, rare but persistent, when the silence of his car seemed louder than the city outside. He wondered if this was all there was. Was he destined to spend his life chasing numbers, acquiring more, only to feel less? His fingers tapped against the steering wheel absent-mindedly as he stared through the windshield, lost in thought. Just as he was about to start the car and drive home, something pulled him out of his haze. A light knock on the window. Frowning, he turned his head. Two children stood outside his car, a boy and a girl, no older than 6. They looked up at him with wide blue eyes, their small hands clasped together. Their hair was a rich brown, slightly tousled, and their clothes, though clean, were slightly worn. Something about them struck him immediately, though he couldn't quite place what it was. The boy hesitated before speaking, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mister, can you give us a ride?" Alex stared at them, his mind struggling to process the situation. Two kids, alone, approaching a stranger in a luxury car at night. Where were their parents? What had led them here? He rolled down the window slightly, keeping his tone calm but firm. "Where are your parents?" The girl tightened her grip on the boy's hand and took a small step closer. "We don't know," she said softly. We just need to go somewhere else." Alex's instincts screamed at him that something was off. He had spent years making quick, calculated decisions, analyzing risks, finding the most logical course of action. And logically, the best thing to do was to call the police or find someone nearby who could help them. Yet as he looked at their faces, something inside him hesitated. There was something in their eyes, in the way they looked at him, that made him feel an unfamiliar pull in his chest. A sense of responsibility he couldn't explain. He took a breath, glancing around the street. No frantic parents searching, no one calling out their names. The city moved around them, indifferent, as if this moment existed in isolation from the world. "Where do you need to go?" he asked after a pause. The boy exchanged a look with his sister before answering. "We don't know. Just, somewhere safe." Alex tightened his grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't his problem. He didn't do things like this, helping random strangers, taking in lost children. His life was structured, controlled. But as he looked at them again, at their familiar blue eyes staring back at him, the words left his mouth before he had fully processed them. "Get in." The children hesitated only for a second before climbing into the back seat. As Alex pulled away from the curb, he caught a glimpse of them in the rearview mirror. They sat close together, small and quiet, as if bracing for whatever came next. He didn't know who they were, where they had come from, or why something about them made his heart beat a little faster. But something told him that meeting them tonight was about to change everything. Alex drove in silence, glancing at the children through the rearview mirror every few seconds. They sat quietly in the back seat, their small hands still clasped together as if they were afraid to let go of each other. The girl, Emily, rested her head lightly on her brother's shoulder, her blue eyes scanning the city lights as they passed by. Tommy, the boy, sat rigid, his expression serious in a way that seemed unnatural for a child his age. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on Alex's chest. He wasn't sure what he had expected when he agreed to let them into his car, but now that they were here, he had no idea what to do next. The city streets stretched ahead, endless and unfamiliar despite how well he knew them. His life had always been structured, predictable, controlled. Yet now, with 2 children in the back of his car and no destination in mind, he had never felt more uncertain. He cleared his throat, keeping his tone measured as he spoke. "So, do you live around here?" Emily hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "Not really." Alex waited for Tommy to add something, but the boy remained silent, staring straight ahead. The tension in the car was thick, and Alex could feel it growing with each unanswered question. He tried again. "Do you have a phone number? Someone I can call?" Tommy finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "No." That single word carried more weight than it should have. There was something unsettling about the way he said it, not just as if he didn't have a number to give, but as if he didn't want Alex to call anyone. It was clear that they didn't want to be found, and that thought sent a sharp unease through him. He exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "Look, I'm not trying to scare you, but I need to know where to take you. I can't just drive around all night." Emily shifted slightly, her fingers twisting in the hem of her oversized sweater. "We don't know where to go," she admitted. Alex glanced at them again. They didn't look neglected, but there was something tired in their expressions, something that told him they had been through more than any child should have. He had seen that look before, in people who had nothing left to lose. His mind raced through the options. He could take them to the police station, but something told him they wouldn't want that. He could leave them at a shelter, but the thought of dropping them off in an unfamiliar place and walking away made his stomach turn. And then there was the only other option, the one that made the least sense but felt right for reasons he couldn't explain. After another moment of hesitation, he made his decision. "I have a place downtown," he said, keeping his voice calm. "It's safe. You can stay there for now. Just until we figure this out." Tommy tensed beside his sister. "Why are you helping us?" The directness of the question caught Alex off guard. He didn't have a good answer. A part of him wanted to say that he wasn't sure, that he had no idea why he was making this choice. But another part of him, the part that had felt something shift inside him the moment he saw their faces, knew the answer ran much deeper than logic. "Because you need it," he finally said. Tommy studied him for a long moment, his blue eyes filled with a skepticism that no 6-year-old should have. Alex had met world-class negotiators, investors who played mind games with billions of dollars on the line, but somehow, this small boy's gaze carried more weight than any of them. It wasn't until Tommy finally gave a small nod that Alex let out the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The rest of the drive was silent. The city lights blurred past, neon reflections shimmering against the sleek black car as they moved further into the heart of Manhattan. Alex didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know who these children really were, what they had been through, or what the hell he was getting himself into. But something deep in his gut told him that this night, this moment, was about to change everything in ways he couldn't begin to understand. Alex pulled into the underground parking garage of his high-rise apartment building, the low hum of the car's engine echoing against the concrete walls. As he shifted into park, he turned slightly to glance at the back seat. The children sat still, their small hands still locked together, their expressions unreadable. For a brief moment, he hesitated. He wasn't sure what he had expected when he agreed to bring them here, but now, faced with the reality of two young strangers about to step into his world, uncertainty gnawed at him. Taking a deep breath, he unbuckled his seatbelt. "Come on," he said, his voice steady but softer than before. "Let's get inside." Tommy and Emily hesitated before sliding out of the car. Their movements were cautious, as if they weren't sure whether to trust that they were really safe. Alex led them through the private elevator entrance, scanning his keycard to grant access to the penthouse floor. The doors closed behind them with a quiet hum, enclosing them in the sleek, modern space of the elevator. Neither child spoke as they ascended, their eyes flickering toward him and then back to the illuminated numbers on the panel. When the doors slid open, they stepped into Alex's home, a massive, minimalist penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that stretched across the entire living room, offering an uninterrupted view of the city skyline. The space was elegant but cold, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. White leather furniture, dark marble countertops, abstract art that had been chosen by an interior designer rather than himself. Everything was expensive, yet impersonal. Emily's gaze moved around the room, her small lips parting slightly. Tommy, however, remained wary, his fingers tightening around his sister's hand as if bracing for something unexpected. "You live here?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded. "Yeah." Tommy's expression remained unreadable as he looked around. "It's really big." Alex almost laughed at the understatement but stopped himself when he saw how stiff Tommy's posture was. The boy was still on guard, still unsure of him, and Alex couldn't blame him. To them, he was a stranger, someone they had met only an hour ago, yet here they were, standing in his home, surrounded by a life they probably couldn't even begin to relate to. "Are you hungry?" Alex asked, suddenly realizing he had no idea when they had last eaten. Emily nodded immediately, but Tommy hesitated before giving a small nod as well. Without another word, Alex walked toward the kitchen, pulling open the fridge. His housekeeper usually kept it stocked with essentials, but as he scanned the shelves, he realized most of what he had were things meant for convenience: bottled water, pre-packaged meals, protein shakes. Nothing that seemed remotely suitable for kids. He frowned, then grabbed a carton of eggs and a loaf of bread. "How about scrambled eggs and toast?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Really?" Alex glanced at her, then at Tommy, who was watching him carefully. "Yeah. Why not?" Emily nudged her brother. "He can cook, Tommy," she whispered excitedly, as if this was some incredible discovery. Alex smirked as he cracked the eggs into a bowl. "I can do a few things. Don't get too impressed just yet." For the first time, he saw the corner of Tommy's mouth twitch, almost like he was fighting a smile. It was gone in a second, but Alex caught it. Something about that tiny moment, that brief flicker of ease, made something shift in his chest. As he cooked, the children moved toward the bar stools at the kitchen island, watching him closely. They were still hesitant, still unsure, but the air between them had changed slightly. Alex worked in silence, listening to the occasional soft whisper from Emily or the subtle sounds of the city outside. It wasn't until he placed the plates in front of them that he realized how much he had missed the simple presence of other people in his home. Emily dug in immediately, her small hands clutching the fork as she ate. Tommy, however, paused, looking at Alex with a guarded expression. "Why are you helping us?" he asked again, his voice quieter this time, but just as direct as before. Alex met his gaze. He could see the unspoken question behind it, the doubt, the fear of trusting someone new. He didn't know how to explain it, not in a way that made sense. He could have told Tommy that he didn't normally do things like this, that he wasn't the kind of man who took in lost children or got involved in situations he didn't understand. But the truth was, something about these two made him want to protect them. Something about them felt familiar, though he couldn't explain why. Instead of answering right away, he leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "Because I can," he finally said. "And because you need it." Tommy studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether or not to believe him. Finally, he looked down at his plate and took a slow bite of his food. It wasn't a spoken agreement, but it was something. For the first time in years, Alex didn't feel like he was eating dinner alone. After dinner, Alex watched as the kids sat on the couch, their small figures barely making a dent in the large, expensive leather seats. Emily had curled up, her legs tucked beneath her, while Tommy sat upright, his hands resting on his knees. The television was on, playing some animated movie that Alex had never seen before, but neither child seemed fully focused on it. Instead, they were glancing around the penthouse, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with cautious curiosity. Alex leaned against the kitchen counter, his arms crossed as he studied them. There was still so much he didn't know. Who were they really? How had they ended up alone on the street, asking a stranger for a ride? He had spent his entire career analyzing people, predicting outcomes, making the right moves at the right time. And yet, for the first time in a long while, he felt completely unprepared. He pulled out his phone and quickly typed a message to Mike Henderson, his longtime friend and a private investigator he often hired for business-related security checks. "Need you to look into something. 2 kids, Tommy and Emily, around 6 years old. No last names. I need to know where they came from, ****. He hesitated for a second before adding, and if they have any family looking for them." A few moments later, Mike responded. "That's vague, but I'll see what I can do. Send me a picture, ****. Alex glanced at the kids. He couldn't just take a photo of them without explanation, so he decided to wait until they were asleep. Instead, he locked his phone and walked over to the living room, lowering himself onto the couch across from them. "You guys tired?" he asked. Emily rubbed her eyes and nodded, though she didn't seem eager to admit it. Tommy, on the other hand, stiffened slightly. "We can sleep here," he said quickly. "We don't need a bed." Alex frowned. "You don't need to sleep on the couch. I have extra rooms." Tommy hesitated, as if weighing whether to argue, but Emily's sleepy voice interrupted. "A real bed?" she asked softly, her blue eyes wide with hope. Alex nodded. "Yeah. A real bed." She turned to her brother, her small fingers tugging on his sleeve. "Can we, Tommy?" Tommy still looked unsure, his lips pressing into a thin line. Alex wasn't sure why the idea of sleeping in a room was something the boy had to think about, but he wasn't going to push him. "You don't have to if you don't want to," Alex said. "But I promise, it's safe here." Tommy finally gave a reluctant nod. Alex led them down the hall to the guest rooms. He rarely had visitors, so the rooms were neat but mostly untouched. He pushed open a door to reveal a large bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the city. It was simple, but compared to the couch, it was a definite improvement. Emily's face lit up as she ran over to the bed, pressing her small hands into the soft mattress. "It's so big," she whispered. Tommy remained by the doorway, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something. Alex leaned against the wall, watching him. "Something wrong?" Tommy hesitated before asking, "Where's your room?" Alex wasn't expecting that question. He nodded toward the end of the hall. "Over there." Tommy seemed to think about that for a moment, then nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Okay." Emily had already climbed onto the bed, curling up under the covers like she had been waiting for this moment all night. Tommy, however, remained standing, his small hands clenched at his sides. "Are you sure it's okay if we stay?" he asked quietly. Alex met his gaze, understanding the unspoken fear behind the words. He didn't know what Tommy had been through, but it was clear that the boy wasn't used to trusting people. "Yeah," Alex said. "It's okay." Tommy studied him for a long moment before finally stepping inside. Alex turned off the main light but left a small lamp on near the dresser. "If you need anything, I'm just down the hall." Emily was already half asleep, but Tommy whispered a quiet, "Okay," before lying down beside his sister. Alex closed the door halfway, leaving it open just enough so they wouldn't feel shut in. As he walked back to the living room, he pulled out his phone and sent another message to Mike. "Find out everything you can." Then, for the first time in a long time, he sat down, staring at the dim glow of the city outside, wondering what exactly he had just gotten himself into. Alex sat in the dimly lit living room, the city lights casting a soft glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He had spent countless nights like this, alone, surrounded by luxury, yet feeling nothing. But tonight was different. Somewhere down the hall, two children were asleep in his guest room, and for the first time in years, his home didn't feel so empty. He exhaled, rubbing his temples as his mind raced with unanswered questions. He had already committed to helping them, but what did that even mean? What if their parents were looking for them? What if he had made a mistake bringing them here? His instincts had told him to trust them, but now, in the silence of the night, doubt crept in. His phone vibrated on the table beside him. He grabbed it quickly, seeing a message from Mike. "Got something. Call me, ****. Alex didn't waste a second before dialing. The line barely rang before Mike picked up. "So, I ran a few searches," Mike began, his voice serious. "Checked missing persons reports, child welfare databases, police logs. No reports on a missing Tommy or Emily fitting their descriptions." Alex frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Two 6-year-olds wandering the city alone and no one's looking for them." Mike sighed. "That's the weird part. I did find something, an address linked to a woman named Sophie Miller. You know her?" Alex's entire body tensed at the sound of that name. His grip on the phone tightened. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "I knew her." Mike hesitated on the other end. "She lives in a small apartment in Brooklyn. No criminal record, no recent trouble. From what I can tell, she's been raising 2 kids alone." And Alex, the birth certificates list the father as unknown. A cold wave washed over him, his heart pounding. He hadn't seen Sophie in 6 years, not since she had vanished without a trace. He had searched for her at first, trying to understand why she had left, but eventually, he had forced himself to let it go. Now, as the reality sank in, the pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. "Are you saying," Alex started, but Mike cut him off. "I'm saying there's a strong chance these kids are yours." The words hit him like a freight train. He stared at the city lights outside, his mind a whirlwind of emotions he wasn't ready to face. He felt like the ground beneath him had just shifted, like everything he thought he knew about his life had been rewritten in an instant. "I need to see her," Alex finally said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I figured you'd say that," Mike replied. "I'll text you the address. But be careful, Alex. This is gonna open up a lot of old wounds." Alex ended the call and sat there, gripping his phone tightly. His whole life had been about control, about making the right decisions, planning every step. But this? This was something he had never prepared for. He stood up and walked down the hall, pausing at the door to the guest room. It was slightly ajar, just as he had left it. Quietly, he pushed it open a little more, peering inside. The soft glow from the bedside lamp cast a warm light over the room. Emily was curled up under the blankets, breathing softly, her small hand resting near her face. Tommy, however, was awake. The boy was lying on his back, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. As if sensing Alex's presence, he turned his head slightly, his blue eyes meeting Alex's. "You're not sleeping?" Alex asked quietly. Tommy shrugged. "Can't." Alex hesitated before stepping inside. He wasn't sure why, but he sat down on the edge of the bed, resting his hands on his knees. He wasn't good at this, at talking to kids, at comforting people. But something about Tommy made him want to try. "You don't have to worry here," Alex said after a moment. "I told you I'd keep you safe." Tommy was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. "Do you know our mom?" The question hit Alex harder than he expected. He looked at Tommy, studying the boy's face, and suddenly, it was so obvious. The blue eyes, the sharp features, he saw himself in them. He had been too caught up in the situation to notice before, but now, with everything Mike had just told him, there was no denying it. "I did," Alex said honestly. "A long time ago." Tommy seemed to process that, his fingers gripping the blanket a little tighter. "Did you leave her?" The question nearly knocked the breath out of him. Alex shook his head. "No," he said softly. "She left me." Tommy turned back toward the ceiling, his small face unreadable. "She's always tired," he whispered. "She works all the time. She never smiles anymore." Alex's chest tightened. He had spent years thinking that Sophie had walked away because she wanted to, because she had chosen a life without him. But what if he had been wrong? What if she had left because she thought she had no other choice? He didn't know the full story yet, but he was going to find out. For now, all he could do was reach out and squeeze Tommy's shoulder lightly. "Go to sleep," he said quietly. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." Tommy didn't say anything, but after a few moments, he closed his eyes. Alex sat there for a moment longer before quietly leaving the room. As he walked back to the living room, his mind was already made up. Tomorrow, he was going to find Sophie. And this time, he wasn't leaving without answers. Alex woke up earlier than usual, his mind already running through everything he needed to do. The realization from last night still hadn't fully settled, but there was no time to process it. If what Mike had told him was true, if Tommy and Emily were his children, then everything about his life had just changed in a way he could never have predicted. And the only person who could give him answers was Sophie. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his watch, but his reflection looked different today. For years, he had controlled every aspect of his life, shaping it to fit the version of success he had envisioned. Now, two small children were asleep in his guest room, and a woman from his past was about to turn his world upside down. By the time he stepped into the kitchen, Tommy and Emily were already awake. Emily sat at the counter, swinging her legs as she munched on a piece of toast, while Tommy leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. The boy's eyes followed Alex as he walked in, as if already sensing that something was about to happen. Alex poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned on the counter across from them. "I need to go somewhere today," he said, watching their reactions closely. "I think I found your mom." Emily's head snapped up, her toast forgotten. "You did?" Her voice was a mix of hope and hesitation. Tommy's expression hardened. "Where?" "In Brooklyn. I don't know the full story yet, but I'm going to find out." Tommy studied him, his gaze sharp and evaluating. "Are you bringing us with you?" Alex exhaled slowly. He had thought about that, but the truth was, he didn't know how this meeting was going to go. Sophie had left without an explanation, and he had no idea how she would react to seeing him again, let alone seeing him with the kids. "Not this time," he said carefully. "I need to talk to her first." Tommy didn't like that answer, but he didn't argue. He just gave a small nod and turned back to his breakfast. Emily, however, looked worried. "What if she doesn't want to see us?" Alex felt a tightness in his chest at her words. He had spent all these years believing Sophie had made the choice to leave him, but what if she hadn't? What if she had been struggling, trying to raise two kids on her own, thinking she had no other option? "She'll want to see you," Alex assured her, though he wasn't sure if he was saying it for her benefit or his own. "I'll be back soon." Before leaving, he made sure they had everything they needed. He gave Tommy his cell phone number and told them to call him if anything happened. He wasn't sure how, but in just a matter of hours, he had already started thinking like a parent. The drive to Brooklyn felt longer than it actually was. His mind kept running through the past, memories of Sophie surfacing in flashes, the way she used to smile at him like he was the only person in the world, the way she'd challenge him when no one else dared, the night she had left without a word. He had been angry back then, furious that she had walked away, but now that anger was clouded by something else, regret, confusion, the terrifying possibility that he had a family he never knew about. When he pulled up to the small apartment complex Mike had given him the address for, his chest tightened. This wasn't the kind of place he ever imagined Sophie living in. The building was old, the paint peeling in places, the sidewalk cracked and uneven. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the way a few people glanced at him as he walked toward the entrance. He didn't belong here, and it was obvious. He found the apartment number and hesitated for just a second before knocking. His pulse was steady, but inside, he was anything but calm. A few seconds passed before the door opened, and there she was. Sophie. She looked almost the same, but different. Her once bright eyes were tired, her face slightly thinner, her brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She wore an old t-shirt and jeans, nothing like the polished woman he had once known. But the moment she saw him, her expression froze. Alex? Her voice was barely a whisper, like she couldn't believe he was really standing there. He didn't know what he had expected, shock, maybe anger, but what he saw in her eyes was something else entirely. Guilt. You left, he said, his voice even, though his emotions were anything but. You disappeared without a word. Sophie swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the door like she needed something to steady her. I know. Why? The word came out harsher than he intended, but he didn't care. He had spent 6 years without an answer, and now, standing in front of her, he needed to know. Sophie glanced down the hallway, as if checking to make sure no one was listening, then stepped back, opening the door wider. Come inside. Alex walked in, his sharp eyes scanning the small apartment. It was clean but modest, the furniture old but well kept. There were toys scattered in the corner, a few crayon drawings pinned to the fridge. It was clear that children lived here, that she had built a life without him. She closed the door behind them, letting out a slow breath before turning to face him. You found them, she said quietly. Alex's jaw tightened. So you knew. Sophie nodded, her eyes filled with emotions he couldn't quite read. I knew. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of 6 years hung between them, heavy and unspoken. Why didn't you tell me? Alex finally asked, his voice quieter now. Why did you let me believe you just left? Sophie closed her eyes for a brief second before opening them again. Because I was scared. Alex stared at her, waiting, demanding more. She sighed and ran a hand through her hair. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. You were building your company, working day and night. I knew how much your career meant to you, and she hesitated, looking away. I convinced myself that you wouldn't want this. That you'd feel trapped. And then, time passed, and I didn't know how to come back. Alex's chest tightened. He wanted to be angry, to tell her she had no right to make that decision for him, but instead, all he felt was a deep, aching sense of loss. He had missed everything, first steps, first words, 6 years of moments he would never get back. They thought I left them, he said, the realization hitting him like a punch to the gut. Sophie looked down, guilt washing over her face. I never told them about you. I thought, maybe it would be easier if they didn't know. Alex exhaled, forcing himself to stay calm. He could be angry later. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered. They know now, he said. And I'm not going anywhere. Sophie's eyes widened slightly, searching his face. What does that mean? Alex straightened, his expression unreadable. It means I'm going to be in their lives. Whether you're ready for that or not. Sophie didn't argue. She just stood there, staring at him like she had expected this moment for years but never knew how to face it. And for the first time in 6 years, Alex knew exactly what he needed to do. Alex stood in Sophie's apartment, his mind racing as the weight of the past 6 years settled in. The reality of what had been stolen from him, what he had unknowingly lost, pressed heavily against his chest. He had spent so long believing Sophie had simply walked away without a reason, that she had made a choice to leave him behind. But now, looking at her, seeing the exhaustion in her face and the guilt in her eyes, he realized the truth was more complicated than he had ever imagined. Sophie shifted uncomfortably, crossing her arms as if trying to shield herself from the confrontation she had avoided for so long. "I know you have every right to be angry," she said softly. "And I don't blame you if you hate me for what I did." Alex let out a slow breath, his fingers curling into his palms before he forced them to relax. "I don't hate you, Sophie," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "But I do need to understand why. Why did you think I wouldn't want them? Why didn't you give me a choice?" She bit her lip, looking away as she ran a hand through her hair. "Because I was scared, Alex. When I found out I was pregnant, I convinced myself that telling you would ruin everything. You were building your company, working 18-hour days, making deals that would change your entire future. I thought if I told you, you'd feel like you had to choose between them and everything you had worked for. And I didn't want to be the reason you resented them." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had always been ambitious, always driven, but he had never once thought that Sophie had seen that as a reason to leave. The idea that she had been afraid of being a burden, that she had believed he would see his own children as an obstacle, made something in him ache. "You didn't give me the chance to prove you wrong," he said quietly. "You decided for me." Sophie looked down, guilt etched into every line of her face. "I know. And I regretted it. Every single day." Alex ran a hand down his face, exhaling sharply as he tried to process everything. He wanted to be furious. He wanted to tell her that she had no right to keep his children from him. But at the same time, a part of him couldn't ignore the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped like she had been carrying this weight alone for far too long. "They thought I left them," he said, his voice quieter now. "Tommy asked me last night if I had walked away." Sophie's breath caught, and her fingers tightened around the fabric of her shirt. "I never told them about you," she admitted. "Not because I wanted to erase you, but because I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell two kids that their father doesn't even know they exist?" Alex swallowed the lump in his throat. He had spent 6 years believing he was alone, and now, he knew that on the other side of the city, 2 small children had been doing the same. "I met them," he said, his voice firm now. "And whether or not you were ready for this, they know about me now. And I am not going to disappear from their lives." Sophie nodded, looking like she had expected those words, but there was something else in her expression: fear, hesitation. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to be their father, Sophie," he said, meeting her gaze directly. "I don't know how yet, but I'm not just going to walk away from this. I won't." Sophie exhaled shakily, looking down at her hands. "I always knew this moment would come," she admitted. "I just didn't know how to prepare for it." Alex's jaw tightened as he took a step closer. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Her eyes flickered up to his, uncertainty warring with something that looked almost like relief. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said without hesitation. "They're my kids, too. And I want to be part of their lives. No matter what that looks like." Sophie let out a slow breath, nodding slightly as if trying to accept something she had spent years avoiding. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know what's right." Alex ran a hand through his hair, his mind already working through the logistics of what came next. "We figure it out," he said simply. "Together. Sophie studied him for a long moment, then nodded again, more certain this time. Okay. For the first time since he had knocked on her door, Alex felt like they were finally moving forward. There was still so much left unsaid, still years of pain and missed moments between them, but he wasn't going to dwell on what they had lost. Right now, all that mattered was what came next. And no matter what, he wasn't going to let his children go again. Alex stepped out of Sophie's apartment feeling a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. The conversation had been heavy, years of unspoken words spilling out between them in a way neither of them had expected. But for the first time since this whole situation had begun, he felt like he was on solid ground. He had 2 children, and now, for the first time, he had the chance to be the father they had never known. That thought alone outweighed everything else. The drive back to his penthouse felt longer than usual, his mind running through all the ways his life had changed in the span of 24 hours. Just yesterday, he had been sitting alone in his car, contemplating nothing more than another empty night. Now, he was coming home to 2 children who had unknowingly turned his world upside down. When he walked into his apartment, he found Tommy and Emily curled up on the couch, watching cartoons. They turned toward him as soon as they heard the door close. Emily's eyes were filled with anticipation, while Tommy's were more guarded, watching his every move. "You found her?" Tommy asked, his voice even but laced with something deeper. Alex nodded and stepped closer, lowering himself to their level. "Yeah, I found her," he said, keeping his voice steady. "She's okay. She's been taking care of you both on her own for a long time." Emily sat up a little straighter. "Did she say when we can see her?" Alex hesitated for only a second before answering. "Soon. We're figuring things out, but she wants to see you. She misses you." Emily's shoulders sagged in relief, but Tommy didn't react as quickly. He looked down, as if processing what that meant. "So what happens now?" he finally asked. That was the question Alex had been asking himself over and over since leaving Sophie's apartment. There was no easy answer. No guidebook on how to integrate yourself into the lives of children you hadn't known existed. But if there was one thing he was certain of, it was that he wasn't going to disappear from their lives now that he had found them. "We take this one step at a time," Alex said honestly. "But you're not going back to how things were before. You don't have to worry about where you're going to sleep, or if someone's going to take care of you. You have me now. And I'm not going anywhere." Tommy's eyes flickered with something Alex hadn't seen before, hope, mixed with a deep-rooted hesitation. He wanted to believe it, but belief was something that took time. Emily, however, didn't hesitate. She slid off the couch and walked straight up to Alex, wrapping her small arms around his waist. "I knew you'd come back," she whispered, pressing her face against his shirt. Alex swallowed hard as he slowly rested a hand on her back. The simple act of her trusting him, of accepting him so easily, made something shift inside him. Tommy watched for a long moment before finally standing and walking over, not quite as openly, but enough that he was close. "So, if we're staying here, does that mean we get our own rooms?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Alex smirked slightly, sensing the walls Tommy had built for himself beginning to crack. "Yeah," he said. "Your own rooms, your own beds, anything you need." Tommy considered that for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because I don't like sleeping on couches." Emily giggled, and for the first time since meeting them, Alex felt like this wasn't just a temporary situation. This was real. This was his life now. Later that night, after putting Emily to bed and making sure Tommy had everything he needed, Alex sat alone in the living room, staring out at the city lights. His phone vibrated beside him, and when he picked it up, he saw a message from Sophie. "Thank you for finding them. And for not walking away, ***. Alex stared at the words for a long moment before typing back. "I'm their father. Walking away was never an option, ***. As he set the phone down, he realized something. For the first time in years, his life had meaning beyond success, beyond money, beyond the endless chase for something bigger. He had a family. And no matter how complicated things got, he wasn't going to let them go. This was just the beginning. And for the first time in his life, he was exactly where he was meant to be. This story is about more than just an unexpected reunion, it's about redemption, second chances, and the realization that true success isn't measured in wealth, but in the people we choose to fight for. Alex begins as a man who has everything, yet feels nothing. His life is structured, controlled, and devoid of real human connection. The moment Tommy and Emily enter his world, everything shifts. What starts as a simple act of kindness becomes a journey of self-discovery, forcing him to confront a past he thought was buried and a future he never expected. What makes this ending powerful is not just that Alex finds his children, but that he chooses them. He doesn't run, doesn't let the weight of lost years hold him back. Instead, he steps into the role of a father with no hesitation, proving that love isn't about being there from the start, it's about showing up when it matters most. There's no perfect resolution here, no easy fix to 6 years of absence. But there's hope. And sometimes, hope is all you need to build something real.